Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sculpt a moose for the layout for the forest scene. This is something a little bit different. Now, if you got, for those of you that have 3D printers, you can do your sculpt in CAD or whatever, but I'll do anything to get away from a computer. I spend enough time there already with work and so on, and I like to do things hands-on, and most of the stuff I do is a one-off, so what's the point of having a 3D printer? But all the power to you, I'm not against them. I just don't need one. So what I'm going to do here is, this photo I got off the internet, Google Images, and I like this posture. I love it that he's sort of, the weight, like you can see the motion, like he's moving forward, okay, with this leg outstretched. Moose have very long legs, obviously. And then this one moving forward and his head hunched down a bit, so he's in motion. So I have a few photos, like I got this one just for a frontal. Okay, this will be good for when I do the sculpt. Now normally I do these in O scale. O is great for doing this kind of thing, or larger obviously. And I've done quite a few in O, but I haven't done one in HO, so I'm going to attempt one. This is close to HO scale, like a very large moose. And I'm cheating it just a little bit because it's going to be back in the trees and it won't be anything really to compare its size to. So that way it's just easier to do more details and it'll stand out a bit more. I like to cheat a few things in scale that are more or less undetectable when they're in a context of trees or you know, structures, trains, cars, vehicles, etc., that you can't directly compare it to. That it's just a way of cheating perspective and scale to make it have more of a visual impact. So what I'm going to use for the armature, what I like to use is, here's some craft wire at 20 gauge. 20 gauge, and then I use a piece of emery cloth to sand it down, just to rub it through, because it'll take the coating off of this, and then you can solder it, right? And I'll show you that following this. So I just use that 20 gauge, and it's roughed up nice, so it'll bite nice with the solder and the flux. So here it is here. So I just basically took a piece about 18 inches long or so, and I folded it in half. So the nose, like at the nose here, that's where where the fold is, right? And so I just had this long, 2 strands. So what I do is I basically just twist it, and then I took one of them off, and then wrapped it around and made 2 front legs, snipped them off, and then I just kept winding the 2 pieces back, because this was a return loop, right? Kind of the way I do the trees, right? You just bring it down, fold it back up, and then chase it back down the spine where the 2 trail off like this to the rear legs. So you can kind of see, you just want to capture some of the posture there, see? You see that? He's sort of leaning forward, that right front leg is up in the air, and then his rear legs extend back. And I'm going to build up some super putty or super clay or epoxy putty. You can use all kinds of different methods. You can build up layers of texture paste, whatever. I've done that for birds and eagles, but I might use Super Sculpey for this one, because then I can clamp this and just put it in the oven and bake it off a bit. But we'll see, and I'll let you know, okay? So that's the armature there, just so that I got something hard skeletal to work with. I'll show you how I solder that. Okay, so I just want to talk about the wire armature for a couple minutes here. So this drawing or this sketch is HO scale. Okay, so if you look at it, it's to 8 feet to the top of the head, and then 7 to the top of the shoulder. Now the moose are generally average around 6 feet, but in British Columbia, Alaska, it's not uncommon that bull moose, they get up to 1,600 pounds, records up to 2,000 pounds, they say. and over 7 feet at the shoulder. So this is HO scale, so it makes sense to sculpt a subject which is the largest of the deer family, in this case a bull moose, right? Now, this fits this schematic roughly, so I'm within dimensions of a 7-foot high moose at the shoulder, okay? Even though this sketch is really based on an elk, because moose don't carry themselves like that, like the head up high like that usually, but I think they're more sort of hunched with the big high shoulder like that. Okay, as you can see as I'm developing this here. Now, what I want to do is, before I start putting putty on this, I'm going to do a couple of layers, well, several. The first will probably be epoxy putty, because it air dries and I can work it for a while and just bulk out the body. Like, just not to full dimensions, but just enough just to get some bulk on here. And then I'm going to do the rest with Super Sculpey, because I can work it as long as I want, and then I can just bake it in the oven at low temperature and it'll harden up nice. I've used Super Sculpey quite a bit in the past for sculpts. And also too, I want to get the posture fixed now. Like, notice here with the leg back like this kind of, but I'm changing a bit, so he'd be going up a hill. Then this leg is forward, so I want to get that right. It's looking pretty good there. Now his head, I don't want him sort of moving off forward straight, sort of mannequin style like that. I always like to add a little more drama with my sculpts. So what I want to do is I want to bend this before I put the putty on. Just I want to turn his head back so he's looking back. He's going to going up over the ridge, but he's looking back at the viewer. Or in this case, you know, the operator on the railroad. They could be in the trees but looking out at you kind of. But moving away in the bush. So that's how I want to do him. And that way you can see the rack, you know, so you get this sort of a look, right? So he's looking back, and going up over a ridge. That's kind of the, you know, how I want to stage him. So I want to get that figured out now roughly before I start putting putty on this, because I won't be able to shape it or bend the armature in this case once that's already on there, okay? And then furthermore, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I drilled a hole in this dowel. This is my drying rack for stuff, for doing figures, etc. And then I just drilled a hole in there. That way I have a couple of options to mount and to handle this as I start sculpting. And then I can put this in the oven too with Super Sculpey, and it won't hurt it, because it's only 200 degrees or something or whatever, and the wood will be fine. Okay? So that's where I'm headed with Bullwinkle. Okay, so you can see how I've baked this forward section, the head, how darker brown it is, see? So it's hard now, so I don't have to worry about deforming it, you know, while I'm building up the rest of the body. And then I can just add this Super Sculpey, and it blends in really good. I can feather it in, roll it out, and just start sculpting this part of the body, like this area here and the hump, and then further back, and feather out the putty to the copper wire for the legs. Okay, so it's probably a good time to talk about this little miniature sculpture for a minute or two. So you can see that I've kind of skinned over very thin with Super Sculpey here over the baked main body. You can see the head, the second baking, it goes even darker there, see? So I did the head first, right, over the soldered wire armature, and then the main part of the body, just to give it some stability. And now I'm going to do this leg here last, because otherwise I'll just keep deforming things. So you can see that the legs are kind of shaped up. And then I've just done the ears here. They're fairly protected with this copper antler piece, which will be, I'll build up the actual rack, the bull moose rack at the end after the baking process is done. But now I want to get some of these finer details. Like you can see the ears, they were just blobs. You know, the beauty of this clay is like when you work at it, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. It just goes on. Here, I'll put some here because I got to build this up a little bit. This forward shoulder bit. So you just put a blob on like that and you just work it in. I find this tool does everything pretty much. See, it's just a pointer made of bamboo or something. I don't know where it is, but a little corner. You can get it from artist supply stores. Sometimes it's the most very basic tool that does the job. See how you can just sort of work it in? And once you work it, it gets really soft, but it firms up pretty good before you bake it, which is what I like. And then I can even take a little brush and smooth it out and work it in. You can see that. See that? And you can use a little bit of rubbing alcohol, or pardon me, isopropyl alcohol too. I always use 99%, but you can use 50% or 70%, and it won't hurt it. I've tested it with IPA just to soften things. But I'm going to stipple this after. That's why I recoated this. So you can see how that works then. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fix up the eyes here. I'm going to build them up, the eyebrows a bit, and then a little bit more the nose, that sort of moose nose, and a little bit of the bottom lip. And then I'm going to add that it's got that kind of beard here. Okay, so this is primarily done now, the mousse. This is the 4th time in the oven. So what I did was I added just a thin layer of Sculpey, and then I stippled it with a brush. You can mix the Sculpey with isopropyl alcohol. You can turn it into a slurry. You can see there. And then, like, this was turned into a slurry, and then once it just sat for an hour, it's just back to normal Sculpey. But if you mix in, I use 99% IPA, it just turns into a mud, and you can paint it onto surfaces and do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. And then once you let it dry, just air dry, before you put it in the oven, it'll retain its shape, whatever it bakes at. So it's pretty cool stuff, right? You know, I've been using it for over 20 years for stuff like this, and I mean, there may be other products out there. I know that sculptors use other mediums, and that's fine, but I like this particular product because I'm used to it. So you just got to go with what you're used to. So, I mean, you can see that I added a little bit to his beard there. Like, look how it's just a feathered little chunk that I just pushed on with with the little bamboo skewer. I just, when it was soft, I just went like that. All right. And then I put it in the oven and it's like hard, right? See how it holds detail nice? And I did a little bit of stippling with a number 11 blade there for the top sort of ridge. Yeah, I mean, you can do anything with this material, okay? So we'll press on from here and probably move into doing the antler rack here. I haven't decided yet, but this is copper, so you can crush this down, you can squeeze it down. Okay, so this part is proving to be quite difficult to film. I mean, look at the size of this sculpture. Look how small it is compared to my thumb, right? So I'm going to do the antlers. I got to have a drawing here. Moose antlers vary, but they have certain characteristics. So what I'm trying to do is just set it up with some copper wire. In this case, just jeweler's wire. I just stripped it with some emery cloth. So just in case I need to solder, just to seal it in place, but I might not have to. Okay, so, and what I'm doing here is basically winding it around just in the same way that I make trees. It's the same way, just wind wire, and then I make a loop. And then you can see here, I just twist. Until I get this kind of a series of loops, which I'll snip these loops. I'll snip these loops later for points, and then I'm just going to fill this with texture paste probably. And then here's the front antlers that I'll bend up. At least I can bend and shape it. Okay, so just want to point out the antlers then that I've basically wired up the armature. See the loops, how I twisted them? Just like making the trees the same way. It's the same principle exactly, but just on a really small scale. In this particular case, it's like jeweler's work almost. But I really like doing these kind of sculptures like this. But I think the next one I do, just for fun, I think, or whatever. So I want to get back into this again. I want to do some in O scale because it's a little bit better to work with. That way I can do deer, bucks, things like that. Because HO, I mean, this is the largest of the deer family in HO. If this was a deer, it'd be maybe half this size. That would be really tough to pull off. But nevertheless, this has been quite a challenge, and it's gotten me back into it again. So. And I've convinced myself that it is doable. Okay, so I just want to point out something with the antlers now. Now, see how because I soldered them, now I have the ability to take some pliers and squeeze them flat to get the rack more scale because of the fatness of the copper and a little bit of extra solder, see? So I'm working the leading edge right here a little bit, just flattening this out. Okay, see here at the back? The solder's soft and so is the copper, right? So I can come in like this, squeeze, and this sculpture is very tough. It's built on a copper armature with this oven-baked ceramic style clay. So this is a very, very tough, even the legs, they're impregnated with copper wire, right? So I have a very tough sculpture here so I can manhandle it, you see. You know how by now, for those of you that have been following the channel, you know how I overbuild things. But that's just, you know, the past sort of professionalism coming in, because you just can't make, I mean, it's okay to make things with more sensitive materials, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And the nice thing I think I mentioned about 3D printers is if you do the sculpture in, you know, whatever program you use, and you print it out of resin, I don't know how these legs will hold out, but, you know, this traditional tactile hands-on sculpture is going to be tougher than a resin sculpture. So, but not everybody wants to do this. And the nice thing about the 3D printer is once you put all that time into a nice little sculpture, you can just reproduce it, right? So for those of you that are into that, you know, look into doing these kind of things, like learn how to sculpt, and because that's where you're going to make your money. If you build a character moose or whatever, and I know there's some of you out there doing it, then everybody's going to want one, right? So that's the whole point. So, you know, I want to encourage that too, you know, I want to encourage the entrepreneurship and the hobby as well, because it'll help subsidize, you know, your own layout or hobby. Okay, so then these loops I'm going to leave yet, because remember how, like, they're a little bit larger than what they need to be. Like they'll be cut back a bit. See, like that, where the edge of the paintbrush is. And like this, a little bit. But I don't want to do that yet, because I want to look at my photo a bit more. Because I want to be able to have these prongs, right, poking out. So I'm not going to need to fill in too much of this to get that, you know, moose rack look, right? Except there's a few, like these sort of singular, more larger antlers. I probably could have added a little more solder there, but anyway, I can probably fill that in with texture paste anyway. So, okay. Okay, so time to fill in the antler spread here, or the bowl and this antler rack. So what I'm going to use here is good old fiber paste, right? Most of you know by now I use this for everything and anything. Not as an exclusive product, but just, you know, how it is with the modeler. That's the beauty of model making and model railroading, just the myriad of materials that we can use in unique ways to achieve, you know, oftentimes the same result. It's just a great hobby that way, and fits each individual to whatever they have on hand or whatever they feel comfortable with. And I feel quite comfortable with this fiber paste. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay some in here. A little piece of parchment paper just in behind there. And I'm just going to get some of it started. Okay, so I'm just resuming a little more airbrush work before I probably might go with some oils maybe, or water-based acrylics. I'm not sure yet on this one, but I'm laying in the Tamiya flesh, buff, and deck tan, as you can see. So the flesh is on the antlers. Then you can see the buff is on the main body and then the deck tanner on the legs. And now I have a little bit of this dark color here. And I just want to get a little bit, as much as I can with the airbrush before I do that, because it has such a soft blend. You see the colors there, how they blend nice with an airbrush, as opposed to trying to achieve that with a wash with acrylic or oils even. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of dark under here. The rear end here I'll just do with a wash probably, because I want the inside of that leg to be pale. Okay, so I've laid on antlers just to refresh, flesh, body buff, legs, deck tan, underbelly dark, right, which is just brown with some black in it, or black with brown in it. Okay, just so it reflects light a little differently. See that? It's not totally black. And then I'm going to do a little bit of the side body, some red brown, and then I'm probably going to use oils to finish it off with, because the oil has a nice transparency, and it'll allow me to control the paint and blend a bit better. So what I'm going to do here is just I'll add a little bit more red after this. We're just going to get a little bit more. Notice how the airbrush here too is I have the needle set already pre-opened a bit with my adjustment there, so that I don't even have to pull back on the trigger. See? Just press down. Now this dual action acts like a single action. This is what a single action does, right? You don't pull back on the trigger, it just lets paint out, right? Okay, so I'm going to finish with a little bit of red brown. And once again, when I say red brown, it can be, it's probably a mixture of this number XF79 linoleum deck brown, just with some black. Like I say, I don't, once you get experience mixing paint, that's why I encourage it. You just go by feel. So we'll get some red brown going through here. And when I change colors in between, I just blow out the prior color, a bit of IPA through there, and then I just put the next color in and then blow some through. If you're doing earth colors like this, it doesn't matter. It's different if you're going from dark to white though. Okay, so I just want to add a very little bit of red brown in here to this guy. Not too much. That ought to do it. Okay, so it seems only fitting that I should at least close with a short commentary here. A couple of things I just want to tell you how I finished this quick, and then just give a word of encouragement out to those that are into 3D printing. Okay, so what I did with this was I just put on a wash of raw umber. So the first, like when I painted this after it was finished, I just put a like it's all acrylic, right, with an oil wash. So I just sealed the antlers up with some Vallejo semi-gloss finish here, just to clear. Okay, just to sort of seal it up a bit. Okay, and now what I did next is I airbrushed this bottom part of the legs deck tan, right? It's all Tamiya deck tan on the bottom legs. Then I did the top buff, remember? Okay, and then I went underneath like this with black brown. I just black with some brown in it, sprayed underneath. There's buff on the nose, a little bit of buff on the forehead, right? And when I turn it upside down like this, the paint just oversprays into those areas, right? It was really simple. It was the simplest part of the whole thing. Painting is a little overrated, I think, anyway. I think like with an airbrush, like you'll blow your mind when you practice how the effects, like you'll be saying, well, no, I need to do more. No, you don't actually. Less is better. Just don't overdo things. You'll make it worse. Anyway, then I took some raw umber Winsor Newton, put a wash on, and then just wiped the dark umber away from the nose, the head. Just moved in a bit around here, and then just a wash, and did a bit of a wash on the top here, on the ridge. Okay? So now, I just want to say to those of you that are into 3D printing, go for it, man. And if you do, let me give you a pointer, if I could. If I could just give you 1 or 2 pointers in your Blender or whatever program that you use to, because you got to sculpt it first, right? And the advantage is over injection molding is you can pull off these kind of postures without doing a complicated mold, okay? Make sure that if you do a figure of any kind, turn the head. Get away from the mannequin look. First rule of thumb, get away from, standing up straight. Like here, I'll just show you a photo. Like, see this moose here? Nice photo, right? But look at him. He's like a mannequin standing there, like gazing, like, right? Like that's why injection molding wants figures like that, because it's easy to pull them out of the mold. Get away from that. Think that way, and then turn his head like here. Here what I did is I turned his head almost 45 degrees, right? See? And I lifted his front leg up in the air and bent these legs back away, like just to give him motion, right? That to add a little motion and drama. Because with model railroads, like you can't get away from the static bows anyway. I mean, trains are the animation, but that's the thing about figurines. And this is one of the reasons why I don't use figures in any of my locomotives yet, because I haven't found any that I like, okay? So I'd rather do my own. But in HO, oh geez, I don't know if it's the eyes. It's my vision, even with glasses, it's just not the same anymore. But anyway, so that's him, and I'm happy with him. I prefer to do this in O. But once again, for those of you that are into 3D printers, the sky's the limit for you, man. Like, it's too late for me. Like, I don't want to learn another learning curve. Like, I like the hands-on, tactile, old, traditional method. It works good for me. So if 3D printers is your thing, learn Blender or learn the sculpting program. When you do your skeletal frame or whatever, play around with the animation, posture. I learned that from the old masters, from Ray Anderson. You know who Ray Anderson was? The Art of the Diorama. If you can still find his magazine on eBay, you're lucky. Grab one and read it. I read mine till it fell apart over and over again. So, when I was younger, a kid, right? Guys like, the military modeler artist type artisans like Francois Verlinden, Shepard Payne, like those guys were the masters when it came to figures and dioramas, right? Because model railroading is just another form of diorama art, really. And even if people don't think it's art, you're doing it anyway. It's artistic. Like, you can't get away from the artistic. Say what you want, but it just starts to become sour grapes. Just accept the stigma, man. We all have the spark of artistry in us at one level or another. So anyway, thanks for supporting the channel. Thank you to all my loyal subscribers, because you're the ones that make this kind of thing possible. Because I have so much content I want to share down the road. the journey and story as River Road unfolds. So happy modeling, all the best to you, and I hope that you have a great day. Cheers.